Welcome to the Restoration Room, a space designed for rebuilding, for healing, and finding your way back to wholeness. Here, we get real about mental health, spiritual recovery, and the wounds left behind by life, toxic church culture, or personal brokenness.
What up, fam? Welcome back to the Restoration Room. Today, we're addressing something many people feel but rarely name out loud: spiritual PTSD. When you've been hurt by church, leadership, or spiritual environments, it doesn't just wound your emotions. It can actually reshape the way you worship, pray, or trust again. And sometimes just walking into a sanctuary can trigger fear instead of faith. I've been there. Trust me, it does. So, in today's episode, we're talking about how trauma can affect worship, why prayer can feel unsafe, recognizing emotional and physical triggers, signs of spiritual trauma, and how to re-enter spiritual spaces slowly, safely, and gently. Whew, a whole lot to cover tonight. The truth is this: God never shames the traumatized. He actually heals them. Romans 12:2 reminds us that the transformation happens by the renewing of our mind, not forcing yourself into what hurts. If you've been spiritually triggered, you've been shut down, or afraid to return to God's presence, this is your episode. I don't want you to miss it. This is the Restoration Room. It's time to dig in. Let's go.
So take a seat, take a breath, and lean in, because restoration starts right here in the Restoration Room. Starts right here in the Restoration Room.
What up, fam? Welcome back to the Restoration Room. We are at episode 8, and man, we dealing with some heavy stuff. This has been an amazing journey. I know that I've been saying that every week, but y'all just don't understand how amazing this journey has been for me. I have been in a space where I've just felt free. I love it. Like, God is doing something crazy for me with this podcast, and I think that is super dope. This has been a long week so far. And it has been rough, but I'm here in the Restoration Room to get refreshed and refueled. Tonight, we're talking about spiritual PTSD. It's a real thing. I I dealt with some things for myself, right? I've talked to you all, really, we've walked through different areas of my life where I've experienced kind of hurt. I've experienced betrayal. I've experienced issues. And that we're at the part where I had to kind of start the really recovery part, right? We've dealt with all of the trauma, but now we're in like the midst of how the recovery piece of that trauma. So now spiritual PTSD. PTSD is a post-traumatic stress disorder. It is really when a person has endured a trauma, and post-trauma, which is after the trauma, they start experiencing different kind of issues and delays. Some regular signs for post-traumatic stress is when you have something that is called a trigger. And a trigger takes you back to a space that may not be so healthy for you. I talked last week when we talked about forgiveness. I talked about how like the scent of my ex took me into really bad spaces, right? That's like that's PTSD. So today I want to really talk to you about what is spiritual PTSD. It is the exact same thing, except spiritual. Sometimes we go through places where we are hurting real bad. And the truth is that we haven't processed it. We have not gone into places where we dealt with things healthily. I think for me, to deal with my trauma, I went through a lot of bad coping mechanisms, a lot of areas of my life where I filled empty spaces with things that were not necessarily healthy. So, for instance, in the midst of my church hurt, I left my church. And when I left my church, instead of going to another church, I stopped going to church. And I did what a lot of people think is always super healthy, which is like not, oh, God knows my heart, and I'll be watching the service on YouTube. And this was like well before services were being live streamed. So I was never watching services live. I was always like finding different messages on YouTube. Because at the time, I think MySpace was still like a thing. Wow. MySpace was like phasing out and Facebook was really becoming like that big social media platform. Um, Sidebar, y'all remember Black Planet? Ooh, wait, that was a thing. Okay, I'm back. um, so when I went into the first part of my church hurt, I would go into church and I would still go to my original church, the church that I experienced the really bulk of my church hurt at. And I would sit in the back of the church and I would not come in dressed up. I put on whatever I wanted to wear. And I sat on the back row closest to the door, in the seat closest to the door. I was not interested in really hearing from people that had wronged me. I just knew that I was hurting and I needed to go to church. I knew that I needed to be in the house of God. What I didn't realize was that I was putting myself in harm's way. So last week we talked about forgiveness and how you can forgive, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to put yourself back into harm's way. So this particular time, I was going to church, to the place where I was hurting, seeing people that had hurt me. And so what I would do is I would go in early and I would be there for prayer. So no one could say anything to me. And then after prayer was done, service would start. And I would sit through service up until the point where a person out of persons that were responsible for wronging me, offending me, hurting me, whatever you want to call it, were about to take responsibility for the service. And once they got up, I got up, and I walked out. That was my service for the day. I could have gone anywhere else, but if you know anything, if you know me, you know that I was in a space where the church that I was at, I was very much attached to it. I was very loyal, and I want to say it was almost cultish. To me, it was almost cultish. Like we had the cream of the crop. If you did not believe like we believed, you didn't have truth. If you didn't do things that we did, then you were not it. And so it was a space where I was really torn because I was going through a hurt place, but I didn't know where else to go. Now, I live in Philadelphia, and if you know anything about Philly, there are churches on every corner. There's literally churches on almost every corner. You can't go 2 blocks without seeing a church, whether it's a big church, an old church, a small church, a storefront church. There are churches everywhere here. So I could have gone anywhere. I just didn't know where else to go. So I continued to put myself in harm's way by rehashing and like unscabbing the wounds that were trying to take a moment and breathe. And so I kept going, kept going, kept going. And at some point, obviously, I stopped. But whenever I went, um, it was hard. I kept rehearsing the words that were said. I rehearsed the feeling that I was feeling. I went through triggers. One of my triggers was people. My problem, though, while persons hurt me, my problem had more to do with how I saw those people. I had immortalized them. That means I made them immortal. I gave them more power than they deserved. I gave them more room than they did. I put them on a pedestal and I really began to worship these people in a way that I didn't even realize that I did. And so when I told you before, like when I left church, I was like, okay, I left church and now everything is gone. Um, and I said to the Father, like, Lord, what am I gonna do? Like I don't have anything else to do now. Everything's taken from me. Everything is gone. And God was like, well, what am I? Like chopped liver? Like what what am I to you? And it was at that point for me that I realized that I had a relationship with religion rather than a relationship with God. I realized that I was worshiping the creation and not the creator. So whenever I saw the creation that really hurt me or that bothered me, um, I went into this really, really dark space. And that dark space had a lot to do with not having addressed issues that needed to be addressed. Um, Not really healing the way that I needed to heal. So once I finally left and completely stopped going, and had completely dissociated myself with that church, I began, excuse me, I began drinking, I began partying. We've rehearsed this already, so y'all don't need to know the whole story. Go back a few episodes and you'll get it. I went through like my process of not coping, of coping improperly, rather. And what happened was every time someone said to me, come on, Ryan, let's go to church, I was like, no, I'm good. I'm not interested. Um, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to do anything that looked like what I came from. I did not want to see anyone that even resembled what I came from because I was still hurting. And it wasn't until one of my friends, who actually was my babysitter when I was a kid, she called me one day and she was like, "Listen, enough is enough. You need to go to church." And I ended up going back to the church that I originally got saved at, Bethel Deliverance Church, up here in Philly on Cheltenham Avenue. That's where I originally got saved. And so I went there, and Bishop Lambert took over the service. It was his time to preach, rather. And he grabbed the microphone and he said, I don't know who this is for, but I hear the Lord saying, I'm not through with you yet. You're hurting. I know, but you're in the right place for me to tell you, I'm not done with you. And I broke down and I cried and I cried and I cried because I knew that the Lord was talking to me. And that began my journey of really building up trust in God again. So what happened is eventually, like I said, I was worshiping more the creation than I was the creator. And I gave the creation more power than I did God Himself. And so what happens is when my issues came, when the hurt came, when the pain was present, I blamed God when it wasn't Him who did anything to me. So anytime someone tried to pull me closer to God, it affected my worship. It affected my prayer life. It affected how I even saw God because I was just not interested. I was like, I left church, but I did not leave God. But the truth is that I, I think from now at this perspective, I would probably even question how much of God I really had, how much of God I really possessed. I had a lot of knowledge. I had a lot of word. I had a lot of experience. But it really wasn't until this moment of my life that I realized I didn't have God like I thought I did. And so I had to go through a process of rebuilding. Rebuilding was tough. It was really, really ugly because um, I had to dig out of a lot of things. I had to uproot a lot of things that had been instilled in me. And some things are still instilled to me to this day. Like some things I still be like, but I don't I check myself when it happens. Be like, is that really like God or is that like something you've been taught? Is this really, who what God is saying, or is this what religion has taught you? Because as much as I tried to avoid religion and religiosity, I became a huge person that was just religious. So I ended up having to really be able to identify. I had to break some things down. I had to identify spiritual traumas. I had to identify what trauma looked like for me. What was real spiritual trauma, and I went through some things in my life. I had lost people that I had loved dearly, um, both in relationship and to death. And I was a mess. I was broken. And every single time something happened, I went back and I blamed God. Like, why did you let this happen? Why did you allow this to happen? And what always came back to the root of things was my church hurt. I'll never forget those moments that I realized that I was really talking to God and asking Him, how could you allow this to happen? How could you allow death, this kind of death, to come? How could you allow for my heart to be broken again? Again, it's been broken. Again, it's been torn apart. Again, something that I cared about the most has been ripped out of me. It's literally been like my heart, I felt like it was taken out of my chest, ripped up, thrown down to the ground, and then stomped on. And I'm like, and God, you're continuing to let this happen. What did I do to deserve this? Where did I go wrong? How did I, how did I get to this place? I blamed God for things that He allowed to happen, but He did not necessarily do Himself. So when I began to recognize what spiritual trauma was for me, spiritual trauma for me was really every time something happened, I blamed God for it. I turned it spiritual. I did not always take accountability for the things that I did, that I caused. Because let's be honest, y'all, we caused some issues, we caused some problems, we caused some big problems in our lives that we don't want to take accountability for. We want to blame everyone else for what they did. And in truth, it is some people sometimes, but a lot of it is us. Like a lot of us are really out here causing issues and blaming other people and saying, well, you didn't do and you did and you did. Well, what did you do? Where it takes two to tango in a lot of issues and a lot of situations, but we don't want to take accountability. So I had to finally take some accountability for things that I did and things that I did not do. And so I realized that my spiritual trauma began to manifest itself in ways of distrust of church, distrust of those in church, ignoring clear loud and clear signs and warnings from God, um, only listening to people that were the furthest away from what uh, I felt was comfortable. So, in other words, like what I thought was safe spiritually originally before my church hurt, I went the complete opposite direction. So, whereas my pastor where I grew up, he was not a hooper. He didn't hoop and he didn't give the old and God like he didn't do that, right? He was very much like he talked very plain Jane like we did. He had moments of excitement, right? But for the most part, he was very much like he talked very level, very even toned. He was a teacher, a solid teacher, amazing teacher. Um, and he was like very even toned. The way I'm talking to you now is the way he talked to us, maybe with a little bit more charisma. Um, but instead of going towards something like that, which is what I was comfortable with, I went the other direction. I went to the hoopers and the hollers and I don't know if it was like something that made me comfortable as much as it was. I knew that I had to identify with something spiritual, but I needed to make sure it wasn't that. Because if that was what God was, I was not interested in having it. So if that's what God does to people, then I need to figure out who this other God is that other people see. Because they clearly get something else out of this that I'm not. Like that was my mindset. That was where I was, right? And so I went total different directions. Like I said to y'all, I started coping badly. I started doing a lot of things. I started exploring my sexual proclivities. I started, everything that was wrong to do. I was out here. I was doing it, and I was having a good time while I was doing it too. And anytime someone mentioned church or something looked like church or something sounded like church, I left quickly, quick, fast, and in a hurry. I'll never forget, I was at a bar one time. I'll never forget the bar. I think it was called like the White Horse. It's on Lancaster Avenue. I was at a bar having a great time. There was this social event. I want to say it was like a karaoke social event or something like that. One of my friends dragged me out of the house. We went having such a great time. Drinks, food, great people, great music. And then all of a sudden, someone got up and grabbed the microphone and started singing, Never would have made it, never could have made it without you. And then all of these people were like, "Sang, yeah, yeah." And I looked at my friend. I was like, "You ready to go?" I'm ready to go now. Now, whether whether God was trying to talk to me or not, I have no idea. But what I did know was I wasn't about to be in the building when the lightning came to strike, and B, if it never came to strike and he was really trying to talk to me, I was not sticking around to hear the message. That that was my recognition moment. That was the moment when I realized I was running from something. I was running from God. And at some point, I had to get back to what I knew. And so I ended up having to explore different churches. I started going to different places. And I went to this one church in Philadelphia called United Evangelistic Church. And this woman preacher one of my favorite preachers to this day. Uh, Margie B. Gathers, Pastor Margie B. Gathers. She was not a pastor at the time, but she was an evangelist, preaching woman. The Lord used her greatly to bring me back. But the one thing that she did was that really, really touched me and helped me was one, she did not rush me back into a life of spirituality, if you will. She did not rush me back into reclaiming um, my spiritual identity. She did not rush me. And as a matter of fact, she listened to me. I'm sure that I told her my story of my church hurt 10 to 12 times. And each time, bless her heart, each time she listened to my story, and it was almost like she had never heard it before. Oh, son. Oh my goodness. All the theatrics. Um, but after it was done, she said something to me each time. She said, son, what you went through was tragic, but you have to learn to trust God again. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what that felt like. I didn't know, honestly, what real relationship with Christ and real relationship of trust, what that really looked like. Because I trusted man and not God. And for over a year, she kept saying to me, son, you got to learn to trust God. Son, you got to learn to trust God. Son, yeah, I kept saying, woman, please stop it. I trust him. She was like, no, son, you don't trust him. And it wasn't until years later that I realized, wow, I really didn't trust him. And it was really God who had to finally come to me and say, when are you going to trust me again? And that was when I finally listened, my hard-headed self. But she made re-entry into church, into a life of salvation. She made it easier. She was hard where she needed to be, but she loved me back into Christ. Every Sunday, she gave me the biggest hug. Every Sunday, I got a chance to talk to her, and I'm confident I bored her with those stories. And Pastor, did you know? And did this? No, no, no. You know, um, but she was there for me. She helped me through. She prayed me through. Every chance she got to pray for me, she prayed. And she asked God to heal my heart. And I know that she was praying more than, what I saw physically with my eyes, but she made sure, son, you coming to church tonight? Son, we got church tonight. Don't go home. I'm like, oh, Pastor, I got to eat. Oh, don't worry about it. We about to go get some food. Like she did everything she could to keep me close. She didn't push me. She didn't rush me. She just loved me. And it helped to ease my spiritual trauma and to begin the process of trusting God again. Remember, we talked about forgiveness. It is weird to say that I had to forgive God, but I had to forgive God for what He allowed to happen. I had to process, I had to heal, and I had to release. And when I got to that point, everything started to change. My outlook began to change. My healing process began to change. My life began to begin to transform. And it was a slow process. It took time. And when you are in a relationship and y'all break up or somebody cheats, and after you get through the hurt, after you get through all of it, you decide to stay with his big headed self. It takes a moment. It takes a moment to recover. It takes a moment to trust again. And it sounds weird to say it, but you have to learn to trust God again. You have to get to a space where you remember what it was like to be safe in his arms. And when you give him a little piece and he proves that he can handle that, you give him a bigger piece and a bigger piece and a bigger piece. I hate to tell you today that to go to sleep tonight in this way and wake up tomorrow fully trusting God, that's a miracle. And I would lie to you to tell you if it happened to me because it didn't. It took years to be able to get to where I am today. And I am not all the way there. I'm still struggling with that last L of the ALL. I'm still struggling with it in some areas of my life. But he healed my trauma. He healed my hurt to the point that if I don't even flinch, like when I think about those things, when people want to talk to me about it, hear my testimony, I'm like, oh yeah, let's talk about it. I hope you got a while because we got some time that we it's a whole lot to talk about today, baby. Um, but it's truth. Like it's a thing where now when I go back to revisit that space, if I were to go back and revisit that church, while I remember what happened, I don't hate anyone there. I love them. I openly tell them that every chance I get, every time I talk to somebody, like, oh yeah, I love you so much. You know, I do what I can to show not just my love, but the love of God, what the healed me looks like. Some people love the broken. You said this before. I think it was about broken but not beyond repair. Some people love the broken you, but they can't take the healed side of you. But baby, I'm healed by his power divine. I'm healed. I am forgiven. And I have forgiven. And it feels amazing. You can get through your spiritual trauma. Spiritual PTSD, it's a real thing. Some of us are experiencing it today. Some of us experience it in many different ways. But if you just learn to trust God again, go back to the last episode. What does it mean to forgive? What does that process look like? I'm telling y'all, some of us got to forgive God. But if we can go through that process, it's worth it. It's so worth it. It sounds weird. It sounds blasphemous almost, like I have to forgive God. Yeah, some of us do. Not because he did wrong, but because he allowed us to be handled incorrectly. He allowed us to go through some things. Oh, but the Bible says it was good that I was afflicted. Yeah, it was good because now I know that he's able to bring me out of it, but it doesn't change the damage that was done while I was in it. There was some damage done, like real damage that broke our relationships with God. And we have to figure out how to overcome that. We've been walking through this process, this healing process. It's been so dope. But I'm telling you, we got to get through it. You can get through it. And it's time to move forward in these things. So thank you so much for sitting with truth today. This was really good. I enjoyed this. Spiritual trauma is real. Your body is not your enemy for reacting to what harmed you. Healing, it takes time. Safety matters, and your space and your pace of healing It's holy. It's sacred. Don't let anyone compromise that. You can't be rushed into healing. Take your time. Walk with God. Let Him do the work and find somewhere that you can go that is safe and that is trusted and that can handle you the way that you need to be handled. Next week in the restoration room, we're stepping into something else. Ooh-wee. This is a really, really necessary topic. It kind of continues from where we are today. Unhealthy doctrine, manipulative churches experiences. How do we recover from this? We're talking about it next week. Detoxing from toxic teachings. I'm being joined by my guest, my friend, my cousin, my sister, my church friend. We've been through the ranks. My friend Desi from A Dose of Desi. I can't wait for her to come in and talk to us about how to detox from toxic teaching. She's bringing powerful insight on how grace rebuilds what fear once controlled. We're going to rest in the truth of John 8:32. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Please make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss this conversation between the two of us. Whenever we get into a room, it's crazy. I'm really, really looking forward to this. Share this episode with someone else that you know is recovering or needs to recover from spiritual PTSD. Subscribe to our platforms. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. I can't wait to talk to you again next week. Until next time, this is the Restoration Room, where you come in broken and you leave rebuilt. Have a good night. I love you all.
Each episode blends real talk, biblical truth, and restorative insight.